Welcome back for part 2. I'm just going to grab my eraser tool and do a really nice soft brush, and I'm just going to go in and kind of clean up these really rough edges that I cut out. Just kind of smoothing them out with a nice, not too large, soft, round eraser tool brush. Just going around and fine-tuning some of these little rough cutouts here. So sometimes you need the polygon lasso tool to kind of really do a nice sharp cutout. So I'm just going to grab the polygon lasso tool, just kind of trace over this horn a little bit to get a little bit of a smoother cutout. So that's what I'm doing right now. Just going to go ahead and delete that, cut that out nicely. So I'm just using a combination of a couple different tools to get the right cutout that I need. I'm back in the eraser tool, and I'm just going to kind of erase a little bit of the ear a little bit to make sure there's no more traces of the background left over, and we're getting ready to grab the clone tool next. So now what's next, after we kind of erased what we think looks okay, we're going to have to do the clone tool next to kind of get a more natural finish. So I'm going to grab the clone tool, and I'm going to go ahead and get a nice small brush. So just kind of finding the right sized brush here. So just to show you a brief demonstration of the clone tool, I'm going to go ahead and hold down the Option key, and you're going to get this little symbol right here. I'm going to go ahead and click anywhere. I'm going to click on the nose here, and I can go anywhere else and start to etch out that clone area. And you can see the little addition sign over by the nose where it's taking the sample from. So the goal with the clone tool is to be able to take a sample of nearby hair and then being able to paint it just over the edge there to give the edge a little bit more of a finished look. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit of a demonstration here as I start to take nearby samples of the wool hair and then just going right over the edge and kind of painting a little bit there. And I will switch between the eraser tool. If I go over, or if I don't like the specific texture, I'll go in and kind of clean it up with the eraser tool. So you can see how I'm taking a little sample here. Right there I took a sample, and then I'm just painting it right nearby. And I'm going to continue to take samples and paint. And I'm even going to go to the top of the sheep here and do it on the top section too. But you can do all throughout the edges to kind of finish up anything that looks rough. And sometimes using nearby samples is better than other things. So I'm going to take the top. I'm just taking a sample anywhere up here and just painting a little bit on the edges. Now that we're done with the clone tool, we're going to get back into the eraser tool, and we're going to do much more minute little cutouts and details now that we cloned in some nice texture there to fill out those rough edges. So I'm going to do a very small brush. So I think I'm only going to do like 1 or 2 or 3 pixels. So let's stick with 1 pixel and see if that's too small or not. So this is just the eraser tool. I'm going to make sure I have the right layer selected. And I'm going to go and I'm going to make little eraser. I'm going to zoom in here so you can really see what I'm doing. I'm just kind of painting on kind of the little edges of the hair, giving it little details that you're not going to otherwise have when you have a rough cutout like we had to do. So I'm just adding in those little fine minute details. I believe it's only a 2 pixel width in the eraser tool, so it's a very, very small brush. I'm just going around all the edges. And I'm going to do that here for about a minute. I'm just going to speed it up a little so you can kind of see my process. So now that I've finished everything with the very small 2 pixel eraser tool, I'm going to enlarge it a little bit and kind of finish out this right side. It's a little rough, so I probably just need to increase the brush size just ever so slightly and just kind of clean that last section up. And we're almost done with cleaning out our edges. And I'm just going to do the neck here a little bit and kind of do some fine tuning. And lastly, we're going to do the neck. We're going to add a little bit more realistic shadows to the neck area. So there's one more thing we need to clean up, and that's the little rough edge here on the neckline. You'll see a little bit of that background left over from when I originally added the clipping mask. So I'm going to find the right layer here. That's the sheep. Okay, there's our clipping mask there. I'm going to select the clipping mask portion. I'm going to grab the eraser tool and just clean that little edge up. So we're cleaning up our selection, not necessarily the layer, but the layering mask, which is to the right in layer 2. So I'm just kind of cleaning up that selection before we add in the shadows on the neckline. So as you can see, I'm adding a new layer, and I'm going to sandwich wet that layer behind the sheep, or the suit, but in front of the sheep. This is going to be between those layers. It's going to be a little bit of a shadow. So we're going to grab the brush tool. We're going to paint on a little bit of a shadow effect to kind of give it a little bit more realism. So I'm just grabbing, once again, the soft round brush. I'm doing it not too large, but not too small. This time I'm just going to paint on a shadow where I think it would be cast on the neckline. So it's probably going to be cast a little bit down on the bottom and then going a little bit up top, because that's going to have a little bit of a shadow where the collar is. So I'm just painting that on. Taking the eraser tool, and you can just erase any excess shadows that you don't need. So just kind of erasing that a little bit, cleaning that up. And then I can erase a little bit on that top left portion. Probably don't need as much shadow up there, so I'm just going to erase that real quickly. There we go. So now that we added the shadow, it really kind of brings the top portion and the bottom portion together, makes them feel like they're integrated and they're one object. So now that we completed this task, we can go ahead and zoom out and check out our work. And I believe there's a little hand we need to work on. So if you zoom out here, see everything looks pretty good, just kind of checking everything out. I'm going to zoom into the hand area and go, you know what would be neat to add kind of some fur texture on the hand to add even more realism to this man so we don't have a human hand hanging out there. So I'm going to grab the magic wand, actually the quick selection tool. Let me see if I can select it really easily with the quick selection tool. Sometimes you have to experiment with what's the best way to cut it out. And the quick selection tool is not working quite as well for me, so that's no problem. I think I'll just go ahead and grab the polygon lasso tool here and just hand draw it. It's really not a complicated shape, so I'm just hand drawing the border here of the hand. What we're going to do after we draw this selection is we're going to do the clone tool, and we're going to sample some fur from the head and pretty much color the selection in with it. So now that we have our selection, we are going to create a new layer. That will be where our fur is going to be drawn into. So I'm going to go ahead and find out which ones. I probably need to name some of these so I know which layer is which. So let me go ahead and name a couple of these so I can kind of know what I'm doing. But I'm going to grab the clone tool. There it is. Couldn't find it there for a second. So I'm going to grab the clone tool. I'm going to zoom in and take a sample of what I think would be a really good fur sample for a hand. And I'm thinking this nose area might be the best. The top is a little messy. So I'm just going to grab from the nose area, get a hold down option and go ahead and sample that color. Bring it down and paint on my new layer. So I have a brand new layer here that has nothing on it. And I still have our little selection made that we made with the polygon lasso tool. And I'm going to go ahead and paint that on. I'm going to get a nice big brush and just paint it on. And it should happen pretty easily here. There we go. So I just went ahead and painted that on with the brush, clone tool brush, and we're going to go in and we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to add a new layer, and this is going to be our shadow layer for our hand. We're going to paint a little bit of shadow effects on the hand so it looks like a little shadow is being cast from either the sleeve or the pocket, wherever we want to cast our shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and draw both and delete any excess shadow that I don't need. So I'm just painting on, just using the paintbrush tool and doing a simple black. And then I'm taking the eraser tool and trimming up my selection so I just have a little bit of shadow left over. So just adding a little bit of shadow there really helps. I might just need it on the top portion. I may not need it on the bottom portion as much. So that was kind of our last step in the process, and I think our sheep man is done. There's still a few little things I need to cut out from the suit. There's a few little white spots I can cut out, so I'll spend a few minutes doing that, and then I'll come back and kind of show you the final result. See, there's a little white part I can go to my mask and just take the eraser tool, the polygon lasso tool, and go ahead and cut that out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, but this is pretty much the final result, and I'll show you how I kind of added kind of an evening kind of shot in the background. I'll do that in the final bonus video, but hopefully you've enjoyed this quick little lesson.